memory is really hard to define, but I'd say that memory is something that becomes a part of you. So sometimes you fail to remember it, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It could still be there, and you just need the right environment or cue or sort of emotion, sort of internal cue to actually retrieve the memory.
Where did the idea of memory come from?
Historically, I think everybody sort of knew that memory is always there. But I guess in terms of literature and psychology, I think Freud drew biggest attention to it, to the notion that memory still can exist, but you may actively repress it, or it just has sort of faded, like a faded photo, but you just need the right prompting stimuli to retrieve the memory.
Which is interesting to me, because if you lose a memory, if someone, maybe you tell someone a story about something that happened in your life, and then they remember you telling that story, but they ask you about it in 10 years' time and you have no recollection of it, does that mean that that memory still exists somewhere in your head, or is it gone? It's
unlikely that the episode you have told a friend cannot be remembered unless you're suffering from a particular form of amnesia. But not remembering the fact that you have actually told someone can be actually quite common. And depending on circumstances, if that memory can actually eventually come back, but if you cannot completely recall it, then it could be the case that the memory is gone forever because you have not thought about talking to that person about that memory, or you were heavily intoxicated.
Or you were lying.
Sometimes, huh?
Or you were lying.
Yeah, or you were lying. That's true.
Is all memory the same? Is it all stored the same way and exists within the brain the same way?
No. So there are different types of memories, and they all depend on different and as well as same brain structures. So I think the most recent advances in science have actually shown us that there's no single locus of where memory is stored, and there's no single point either where you use to retrieve that memory. And in retrieval especially, now we began to understand that it involves synchronous communication between different brain structures. And maybe if you can imagine, for example, in terms of episodic memory, it could contain your information about the world. So I know that color is red, for example, or the sky is blue, as well as where that episode happened, as well as how you felt about it. And if you think about all those elements are governed by different areas of the brain. And when you're actually recalling the entire episode, then all those structures seem to be involved in making that recollection happen. So different types of memories. So, for example, episodic memory is, what happened, where and when. But in terms of procedural memory, where for example, you practice riding your bicycle and you practice so much that your body is so used to, as soon as you get on a bike, can recall immediately how to ride a bike. So that sort of memory would also be stored in a different parts of the brain.
Has there been any research done then, if you're losing your memory for whatever reason, in physicalizing? So, if you've, I'm just trying to think of an example, I guess with the bike example, if you've got dementia and you can't ride a bike, in actually getting you to go through the motions, is it possible that your muscles might wake up your brain?
I think so. There aren't much research in that area. But what we know is that exercise is very good. So mental exercise as well as physical exercise can delay the progress. And so it is possible that if you give your body or your brain enough prompting cues, it would facilitate retrieval of such memory.
Some people say they have a photographic memory. Does that really exist?
Not in the sense of remembering everything all the time, constantly. And also even photographic memory, there's no real published account of that memory being long-lasting. So yes, it is the case that some people can remember very minute details that they've seen for a second, or string of words that they've only heard for a few seconds. Exactly the same, maybe, a couple of days later or a month or two, but it is very unlikely that that memory can persist through a long time.
How does dementia take memory away?
We know that, physiologically there's that accumulation of protein particles, and unfortunately that accumulation seems to happen a lot in cortical structures that are important for memory and memory storage, memory retrieval, as well as learning. So I guess just brain has this pathology, and it is just interfering with the existing neurons and existing biological structures in recalling that memory or even storing that memory. So it's very sad that dementia happens. So now we are trying to, or all the scientists are trying to discover how we can get rid of these proteins, or even better, prevent these proteins from occurring from the first place in these neural structures that are important for learning and memory.
Why is it that, and I know that every case is slightly different, but in the case of my grandmother who lost her memory before she passed away, she was actually incredibly clear on memories from the 50s and before, and would often in fact think that's where she was. But minute details and people and things that I don't recall hearing her speak about before she suffered from dementia. Is it linear? Does it take memory away from the closest to the oldest? How does that work?
It's not necessarily linear, but yes, it is the case that the newest memories are affected the most, unfortunately. And I think with the really old memories, and this is a mystery, so no one has really explored this in terms of biological sense, but it looks like, so once you form, so there's working memory, you're perceiving things, and then you become short-term memory, and it can become long-term memory because it was emotionally significant or whatever. Most memories, if you don't retrieve it ever, it seems like they can disappear forever. But there are particular types of memory that once you have formed, do not disappear for the rest of your life, and you don't even have to remember it that often. But when you decide to remember it, you can remember it in detail. And we don't actually know what is so special about these memories that persist throughout one's lifetime, and as well as, and maybe these memories that persist could be similar to other memories that are created later in life that persist and are bad for you, like in post-traumatic stress disorder cases. So I think, that's part of where I'm going with my research, and I want to explore what's different about this sort of memory. And I believe that in dementia patients, there are these memories that they do have, and maybe because the brain is has extra, for example, maybe has extra resources because it's not really remembering other things at the same time. Maybe focuses on these memories that it can remember and in great detail. So it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
It is very sad, dementia itself.
It absolutely is. Dr Jee Hyun Kim, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.